Okay for me.
Right. So in the chat is the resources for this talk. The first one is the NVC summary. It's this sheet. It shows the NVC process. So you may want to download that one and have it available so you can follow along with that. And the second one is feelings and needs. We're going to be talking about a bunch of different feelings and needs. And so there's a sheet that covers all those words, the feeling words and the needs words. So you may want to download that one too. The other three things on the chat, one is the evaluative words that are not feelings. They're words that we think are feelings but are not, and it just gives you a sense of what the real feeling might be and what the need might be. So that's useful to have a look at some point. You may not need it exactly during this talk, but it's useful. And then the All NVC Resources is a folder that I have on Google with all my resources for NVC. There's the NVC book. There's a bunch of exercises. There's different memes and posters or handouts. There's also a couple of books, one book on shadow, different things. So all useful stuff. You can have a look, download what you want to use. And then the last one is Marshall Rosenberg, the founder of NVC. Did a San Francisco workshop some years back. It's a 3-hour workshop on YouTube. And so if you want to dive deeper into NVC, that's a great resource to watch and learn from him. He's fun and he's good at it, and it's a great resource. I still learn stuff when I watch it. But what we're going to do here is a bit of a crash course. In about an hour and a half, we're going to oh, you showed up, Lucia. Hello, Lucia. In about an hour and a half, I'm going to give you a crash course into NVC. The goal is for you to have enough information so that you can participate in the practice groups that we do here on the island. And I also do online. I do one in person and one online. And so once you've learned the system and understand how we use it, then you'll be able to be participating in the practice group where we just practice using NVC and just get better at communicating with people. So let's get into it. What's the goal? The goal of NVC is to create connection, to teach us to communicate in ways that are going to be more connecting as opposed to disconnecting. The fact that violent is in the word, it's non-violent communication, doesn't mean that we're just trying to avoid anything that's violent, like aggressive or yelling or anything, that violent normally means. What Marshall Rosenberg means by violent is anything that is disconnecting. And so that could be the way we speak, it could be in our attitude, it could be in our intention. And so the model that he created was a model of vulnerability. The more vulnerable we are, the more chances we'll have to create connection. And so in order to be vulnerable, we share our feelings and we figure out what our needs are. And so by sharing that, we're hoping to create empathy in the other person. By showing up vulnerably, there's more chance to create empathy in the other person as opposed to resistance. If I share my thoughts and my ideas about what's going on, there's a much bigger chance that people will be reactive and or defensive and push back. So the goal of NVC is to create connection. So using the model is one way to do that, but also there's just other ways to avoid, like giving advice when it's not requested, could be disconnecting. Offering sympathy when empathy is required could be disconnecting. Asking too many questions, questioning people might be disconnecting. So there's all kinds of ways that we can be disconnected from people. So paying attention to that is really key. It's not just using the right language, but also realizing that, what's our intention? Are we looking to connect, or are we looking to avoid pain? Because too often when we try to fix somebody's problems is because we don't want to be uncomfortable. If somebody's having a problem, to just sit with them and sit with them and be with them in that pain or that problem is uncomfortable. And so we have a tendency to try to fix the problem. That way we don't have to stay uncomfortable. So paying attention to all these ways of communication is important. But there's more to it than that. So there's using NVC for communication, but there's also using NVC to understand ourselves, using NVC for my own healing and my own personal growth. And so I'm going to break this talk down in two parts. First, I'm going to teach the basic NVC model, and then I'll show you how we can then use it to figure out what's actually happening in us. Because too often we want to use NVC to stop people from doing the things that are a problem for us, but why are they a problem for us? Some things, sure, if somebody pokes me in the eye, that's not cool. I certainly want them to not do that. But if somebody says something that's maybe innocent and I react to it, that's my own reaction. There's something to explore there. And so that's how we're going to use NVC to explore that. So I'll do the basic, then we'll do an example. I'm going to need somebody, hopefully one of you will be volunteering to use a real life example. We'll go through the process with it, and then that'll lead us into the second part, where we'll work more with our own emotions and our own reactivity. So as you can see in the summary sheet, it's a simple model. NVC is a 4-step model: observation, feelings, needs, and then request. We make an observation about a situation. It could be a conversation or something that happened or something that we're experiencing. We make that observation, then we share our feelings about that observation, because we always have feelings about things. And whenever we have feelings, it points to a need. If I have a positive feeling, it's a need that is satisfied. If I have a negative feeling, it's a need that is not satisfied. So once we figure out what the need is, then we make a request to try to get that need met. So a simple example is, I make an appointment with someone. I'm supposed to meet them at 12 o'clock. I'm waiting. They show up at 12:30. I have feelings about that. And so then I approach them and I say, hey, we're supposed to meet at 12 o'clock. I waited till 12:30. That's the observation. My feelings are that maybe I'm annoyed, or maybe I'm disappointed, or maybe I'm confused because I don't know, was it 12 or 12:30? Was I wrong on the time? So I could have any number of feelings. And so then what is my need? Maybe my need is understanding, or my need is respect, or my need is communication. And so then I'll make a request to get that need met. I'll say, oh, so what I really need is respect. So what I would appreciate is next time, let me know ahead of time if you're going to be late, right? So it's a simple process. But we're going to go through each step individually to kind of tease out any issues, because it's a simple process, but it's not actually that easy to do, especially in real life. So the first part is the observation. So when we share an observation, we want to make sure that it's impartial, that it's neutral, that it's not an interpretation. We want to avoid using words like always and never, because those are rarely accurate. We want to describe whatever happened as if we're looking through a camera lens and we're describing what we're seeing. And so that may be difficult because we tend to see things through our own filters. We experience life through our own filters. And so sometimes we don't remember things the same way. And so that's fine, but that's why we want to be as descriptive as possible and try to avoid anything that's going to be an interpretation. So for example, if I'm describing an interaction we had and I say, hey, yesterday when we were talking, you were really angry. Well, how do I know the person was angry? That's an interpretation. The fact is maybe that they were raising their voice, or they were speaking loudly, or they banged their fist on the table. So I want to describe that. And I want to avoid anything that's an interpretation, because they can argue with the anger. They can't argue with the fist on the table or with the fact that their voice was louder, although they could. But one person's loud, maybe another person's not so loud. So again, that's where the problem will come. So we want to be as descriptive as possible, because the goal here is connection. It's not to be right. There's an old saying, you can be right or you can be married. So the goal here is to avoid trying to be right, because that doesn't create connection. If the goal is to be right, don't use NVC. That's probably not going to work. The goal here is to create connection. So, so I want to be as descriptive as I can. I want to avoid words like always and never, as I said, because those are rarely going to be accurate. It may be often, maybe you're late often, but to say to somebody you're always late or you never listen to me, all I'm going to get is resistance. They're going to push back. They're going to argue with me. So the goal is to avoid creating that resistance. Again, we're trying to create connection. So that's our observation. Once we're done with the observation, then we share our feelings about the observation. So as I said in my example, somebody's late. Even saying late is a bit of an interpretation. It's better to say we were supposed to meet at 12, you showed up at 12:30, because some people live on Thai time, and on Thai time, late is a very different experience than in other places in the world. So you showed up at 30 minutes after we agreed. And so what are my feelings? So we have a lovely feeling sheet. And at the top is feelings when your needs are satisfied, aka positive feelings. We try to avoid positive and negative. And at the bottom is the feelings when your needs are not satisfied. So I could have any number of feelings, and you'll see on this sheet, there's lots of feelings. Not all the feelings are probably on this sheet. You may have some feelings that are not on here. But what you'll find is, what you won't find on here is, for example, when I was waiting for you and you were 30 minutes late after the time we agreed, I was feeling disrespected, or I was feeling rejected or abandoned. Those are not feelings. Those are thoughts. Those are ideas. I'm thinking you're disrespecting me. What I'm feeling is probably hurt or sad or angry because I think you're disrespecting me. And so making the difference between the feeling and the need, between those words is important, because if I feel disrespected, I'm accusing you of disrespecting me. And that's probably going to bring some resistance and some defensiveness. But if I say I'm feeling confused because I'm wondering if you're not respecting me, the reason you're late is because you don't respect me. I'm asking you, I'm wondering if you're not respecting me. Now I'm asking you the question. Now you have a chance to engage with me and say yes or no. And now it's a conversation. It's not a defensiveness. So again, it's not about being right. It's not about being wrong. It's about just creating connection as best as we can. So there's lots of words like that, blamed, attacked, rejected, unheard, unseen, unloved. None of those are feelings. All of those are thoughts or ideas. Anything that's an action that somebody else is doing to me is not going to be a feeling. A feeling is something that's happening in me. It's not something that somebody else is doing. And so that on the chat, for those of you, maybe some of you didn't get it, I'll put it up again. On the chat on the right side, you've got the summary sheet at the top, the feelings and needs, and then the third one is those evaluative words. So in that sheet, you would see something like attacked, and then you could see what feelings might be under attacked, and then what needs are connected to that. Another thing that won't be a feeling is anytime you say, I feel like, or I feel that. I feel like you never listen to me. I feel that you don't really like me. Those are not feelings, they're thoughts. And unfortunately, we've gotten used to using that language in our lexicon, right? Everybody's trying to be, a bit woke, a bit conscious. And so we're using I feel all the time, but we're not sharing feelings. We're just sharing thoughts. And again, it's fine. It's not about there's a feelings police, but it's probably not going to be as connecting. If I feel like you're rejecting me, that's not going to be connecting. But if I feel hurt because I'm wondering if you're rejecting me, I might get a better chance at connection that way. So once I figured out my feelings, then I move on to my needs. Because as I said, the feelings are always feelings where your needs are either satisfied or not satisfied. If I'm joyful, it's because my need for happiness or joy or connection is being met. And if I'm ashamed, it may be because my need for safety or my need for empowerment has not been met. So there's always a need attached to a feeling, and that's the beauty. That's how we can figure out what's going on. So we have a list of needs, nice long list of needs, also full of words. There may be some that aren't on here. But what you're going to find is that a bunch of the words that are not listed here are not actually a need. They're a strategy to meet a need. So if I need reassurance, reassurance is probably bad. It's probably not really a need. The need is probably safety. And reassurance is a strategy to meet my need for safety. And if I ever need you to do something, let's say I need you to be on time, or I need you to go get me something at the store, that's not really the need. The need is going to be, if I need you to be on time, the need is maybe safety, it may be reliability, it may be connection. And why that's important, again, it's because if I don't know what the core need is, I'm limiting my options on how to meet it. So in my example of being late, if my solution to you having been late is to say, hey, I need you to be on time, I'm limiting all the possible solutions to this one way of fixing the problem. It's the only way we'll fix it is by you being on time. But maybe there's a lot of other, or maybe there's some other ways to fix this problem. And so by figuring out what the real need is, if my need is respect, there's probably other ways to get the need for respect met. If my need is punctuality, well, there may be other ways. If my need is connection or anything else, there may be other ways to get that need met. And so we really want to make sure we get to the core need, not to just a one strategy to meet that need. So the strategy to meet the need is basically what we do in the request. So in the request, we're going to make a request to get the need met. So if in this case, my need was for respect, because when you're late, I have this idea that you're not respecting me, then I'm going to make a request to try to get that need met. So there's two types of requests. One way to make a request is an action request. It's to say to somebody, hey, so will you please be on time from now on? You know, just action, just do something for me. And that may well work at times. In certain cases, it works. In this case, if I did a really good job of expressing my feelings and my needs around you being late, maybe me asking for you to be on time might work, because you'll go, oh, wow, I didn't realize, you know, the damage I was doing, or the impact I had when I was late. Now that I hear your feelings and your need, okay, I'm going to really try much harder. So that could work. But a much better type of request is what we call a connection request. And a connection request is when I basically ask to make a connection about the situation. So in this case, I would say, hey, so, you know, I was waiting for you and you arrived 30 minutes after the time agreed, and I'm feeling annoyed because I have a need for respect. I'm wondering if you're open to having a conversation about it. Are you open to exploring this? I'm curious. I want to know more about this lateness. So one of the superpowers in NVC is curiosity and using inquiry. Not questioning people so much, but just being curious about what's going on with them. You know, if they're late, there's a reason. There's something they're needing and that they were trying to attend to, you know, and so understanding that may help me deal with my need. So making connection requests is a great way to then explore that. And then we get to work on it together. I get to hear about your situation, what's going on, why why lateness is happening in your life. Is it a chronic? Is it a one-time thing? What's going on? How can what can I learn more about it? And then how can we work on it? You know, how can you support my need for respect, for punctuality, whatever it is, and then I can support whatever needs you have. So that's the idea. It becomes a collaborative effort instead of me just telling you what you need to do different. And what you'll find is a lot of times when we engage in NVC with someone, our goal is for them to do something different. You know, we didn't like what happened. We had some feelings, we have a need, and now we want to get our need met, and we're going to ask him to do things different. And you may find that that doesn't work so well, because you're basically telling people not to be who they are, because that doesn't work for you, or you're asking them to be other than they are, or to do something they don't know how to do. And so while that's certainly a good effort and a good try, it's not going to create that connection that you might be looking for. And if all you want is to get people to do what you want to do, great, but that's not going to be very connecting, probably. When you make a request in NVC, you want to make sure that it's doable, that it's actionable, that it's measurable, that it's timely. So we use an acronym called SMART, and SMART spells out specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, relevant, and timely. SMART. Specific, measurable, actionable, and timely. I'll put it in the chat. SMART, specific, actionable. You should do that ahead of time. Measurable, relevant, realistic, timely. Yeah, so make sure it's a SMART request. Action request can work. Connection request is better. And there's a couple of types of connection requests you can use. Little magical requests, I call them. One is called mirroring, where you're asking the person to mirror back what you said, to repeat back what you shared. So for example, hey, you heard me share my situation and my feelings and my needs. Would you mind repeating back what you heard me share? And the reason I ask that is because we all tend to listen through our own filters. And so often when people hear a situation, they think about what they would be feeling and what they would be needing in that situation. And they don't fully connect to what might be being said by the other person. You know, it may be completely off, or it may be a little bit off, but it could be tainted, or it could be filtered. And so by asking them to repeat back what you shared, you make sure that you're connected. And with some people, that may really be useful. And you may know people like that in your life, that you tell them something and then they don't really hear you. They kind of get lost on their own track. And so by asking them to repeat, you make sure that you're connected on that level, and then you can start processing what a good request will be from there on. So that's mirroring. And then the next one would be empathy check-in. You basically check to see if they empathically received you. So for example, I shared that when I was waiting for you, I felt really vulnerable. I was feeling unsafe, and obviously I have a need for safety because I didn't know where you were. And so what's it like hearing me share that? When you hear me share that, what do you think? Or what do you feel? Or what are you experiencing? And so you get to check whether your vulnerability triggered empathy in them. You know, we all have this little empathy button right here next to our heart, right? And when it's triggered, we soften, you know, and we're present. And so the idea is that by doing an empathy check-in, you get to see if that worked, and then they may resolve the issue for you. They may say, wow, I had no idea that when I was late, you felt so unsafe. You know, when I'm late, I don't really care. I got things to do, so it doesn't really bother me. I didn't realize the impact it had on other people. And now that I hear that you feel so unsafe, I'm going to make sure that I'm not late for you, or that at least I'll let you know, or something. They'll come up with some way to hopefully help with the issue. So that's kind of the go-to. If you don't know what to do, do an empathy check-in. Share your situation, and then ask them what it's like hearing about it. What are they experiencing? And if they tell you what they're feeling, maybe they'll tell you what they're needing. Then you can reply and say, oh, but when I hear you say that, I'm feeling this way because of my need for this. And you can go into a bit of an empathy NVC spiral, up spiral, where you keep sharing more feelings and needs about a situation, and learning more about each other and connecting more and more. Now, of course, when you make your request, they can say no. Because in NVC, it's just a request. You know, we're not forcing anybody to do anything. It's just a request. Are you willing to do this? Or would you mind? Or can you? And so it's a request. And if they can, they can say no. And if they can't, there's 7 billion people on the planet. Somebody else probably can meet that need. And if the need is central to the relationship, well, then you might have to rethink the relationship, or recalibrate it, or end it, or change it, or whatever. If the need is actually the only reason why you're in a relationship with this person, and they won't meet a need, then yeah, you got to rethink it. And often when people say no, it may be time to check and see, did I just make a connection, an action request? You know, was I basically telling them what to do? And then is that why they're saying no? So, you know, make sure you've gone through the empathy check-in, make sure we've done a connection request and see. And if it's still a no after all that, then it's a no. And that's fine, nothing wrong with that. And I guess it's important to kind of know when we go into a conversation like that, what is our agenda? You know, is my agenda connection, or is my agenda to really have that particular outcome? You know, and if that's what I want, it's going to be a little more difficult to attain. A couple of things before starting this whole process. As I talked about an empathy check-in, you can also do a little bit of self-empathy with yourself. So before engaging with someone, I can check in with myself. Maybe I do a little meditation, maybe I take a walk, maybe I take a bath, whatever works for you. But I check in with myself and I try to figure out, what am I feeling? You know, there's a situation that I want to talk about with this person. What am I actually feeling? What am I actually needing? And once I figure that out, then I can go into the conversation much more prepared, much more grounded, much less likely to be triggering the other person. And I can do that also if I'm already in the conversation. Let's say I've already started a conversation and I can feel the energy rising and I can feel that I'm getting agitated. I can take a break. I can say, hey, can we just pause? You know, this little virtual pause button right here. And I can say, hey, I want to pause. I think it would be better if I took a break, or if I took a moment to check in with myself. And then once I do that, I can see, okay, so I'm certainly, you know, I got lost in my thoughts about them and what they were doing wrong. And I was telling them, but what am I actually needing? What am I actually feeling? And so if I can figure that out, then I can re-engage from a very different place. Instead of telling them what they're doing wrong, I can check in and share what I'm actually feeling and what I'm experiencing. And so maybe it requires taking a break, taking a walk. You know, maybe it's a 5-minute break, maybe it's a 1-minute break, maybe it's a 2-hour break. You guys figure that out. But using that is very useful. And then if I'm hesitant about talking to somebody about something, and I'm not sure how to approach it, I can share that. I can talk about talking about it. I can go and say, hey, there's this thing I want to talk about. I'm not really sure how to talk about it. I'm feeling a bit vulnerable, or maybe I'm afraid that you might be upset by what I want to share or what I want to ask. So first of all, are you open to having a conversation? And then when would we do it? So talking about it, as opposed to just launching into it and not giving them a chance to even prepare for it. You know, and if they're ready for it, there's a much better chance that they'll be able to be more present, more receptive to the conversation. And they get to choose also if they want to have it. So you're not taking them by surprise. So that's the first part. That's a basic model on how to use NVC. So let's do a practice. If anybody's got a situation, feel free to volunteer, and then I'll help you run through the system so that we can all see how it works in practice. And then this is what we do when we're in our practice groups. We get into small groups, and then people take turns using a situation from their life and then we work on it, and they get to explore it, and could be something that's already happened, could be something that they're trying to make happen. They get to practice in advance, or they get to review it in hindsight, what they could have said or could have done. So who wants to volunteer? It can be simple, it can be deep. It's up to you.
And the one that came to mind was it was also the time one that happened. So you kind of just ran through that. So I feel like don't need to do that one. And that's something that just happened in the past. So I'm trying to think of some other thing that's going on right now.
Well, we can use a time one because it'll lead to some other things, and it'll be more personal to you, and we'll explore your own personal landscape. And
sure. I mean, I can do one about, like, this is from a past situation, but just seems still relevant too, about needing space, you know,
okay.
with a partner, and not communicating that well.
Great. So what was the situation?
I had a partner who was feeling, let's see, I want to use the words right, that said that I was wanting to have all this time without them, just having a life of my own, and that I wanted to spend time with other people and not them. And I said, sometimes I need my space, and sometimes that's with myself, and sometimes that's with other people and not you. And yeah, it was taken very, like, you don't want to be with me.
All right. So, and then the way we do this in the small groups, we always mirror back the observation. So whoever does their observation, one of us mirrors it back. So we get to practice mirroring. We get to practice noticing how our filters jump in there in the mirroring sometimes. Then the other person, in this case, Julian, gets to be heard, and make sure that they're being heard. And then they get to hear back their observation to see if it was actually an observation, or if they had some interpretation in there, or if there's anything else they want to add to it or change. So I'll mirror that back for you now, and then we'll see.
Yeah, okay. After you said that, I was going to add some things, but yeah. Okay.
So you had a partner, and they had an experience that you wanted to spend time away from them, and you basically share that sometimes you need some space. It could be space by yourself or space with other people, and they were having a reaction to the fact that you didn't want to spend, that at times you were spending time away from them.
Yeah, correct. And I felt not understood as to what, like, my need was.
Yeah. So now we're in the feelings part, right? So you said not understood, right? So that would be misunderstood.
Yeah, I felt misunderstood and unheard.
Yeah. And so do you remember what we talked about, what I shared earlier about feelings? Those two are not feelings.
Yeah.
So what do you think the feelings are?
Like disrespected.
So basically all of those are your needs. You have a need to be understood, a need to be respected, and a need to be heard. And the feeling is probably annoyed.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I felt annoyed. I felt angry.
Yeah.
I felt, I'm looking at here now, the feelings that, yeah, a bit felt unhappy, sad. I just felt irritated and impatient. Yeah. Frustrated.
Disconnected.
Yeah.
Great. Right. So, and when we do NVC, you can jump to the needs. I mean, in a way, that's what you were doing, but but by sharing them as feelings, if you're saying that to her, now you're basically accusing her of disrespecting you, not understanding you, not hearing you, and that may be why it didn't go so well back in that. But if you're feeling hurt and irritated and sad, that's a little easier to hear.
Yeah.
And so because you have a need for respect,
for
understanding,
freedom,
space.
Yeah.
And so what would be a request? So how would you, what kind of request can you make to get that need for freedom, understanding, respect met?
I think first would definitely want to do one of these, the connection requests, which is like, when I share this, like, how does this make you feel?
Yeah, that's great.
What's going on
for
them, and understand if there's fear or stuff coming up for them, to just get to a place to make a request to say, okay, when I feel I need space, what is a good way we could communicate about it?
Yeah, that's great, right? So that's the gold request, right? So that will create connection, and now you're in exploration together. Beautiful. Because if you say, my request is give me space, that's not going to go well. That's obviously the problem. But too often that's where we go.
Yeah.
So great. So this is what I call the external track, right? So the external track is there's an issue. In a way it is. There's an issue. You're having feelings about it. The other person did something, and now you're going to ask him to do something about you having about this issue. In this case, you're asking her to talk about what happened, but it's still directed to her, right? So she's going to have to be part of figuring out how to solve this problem, right? She'll be part of it. So it's external to you. You're going to need to engage with her to figure out how to solve it. But there's always there's often, almost always, an internal track. And the way you look at that is, whatever feelings you're having, if those feelings are a reaction as opposed to a response. If I'm just responding and saying, oh, you're having an issue with me asking for space. Okay, I can see that. Why don't we talk about it? Right? And there's nothing, no charge or anything. Yeah, that's just a response. And then there's only the external track to be dealt with. We're just talking about it, and we're exploring why it's an issue for her and how we're going to resolve it. But in this case, you talked about being annoyed, being irritated, being angry, right? So it sounds like there was a bit of a reaction to it, right? And the words you use are a clue. When I when I think I'm feeling disrespected or I'm feeling misunderstood, it probably means I have an issue. I have a wound around those topics. I have a wound around respect, or I have a wound around being understood. And so it's a beautiful opportunity to then do that exploration. Why is this so triggering for me? And so this is what I call the internal track. And so one way to explore that using NVC is to say, all right, so let me put these feelings into the observation. So the observation becomes, in your case, when my partner asks for space, I get annoyed, I get irritated, I get angry. That's my observation. How do I feel about that? How do I feel about my annoyance, my anger, my irritation? So if I were to ask you that, when you think about it, what do you feel? How do you feel about this reactivity?
Feel sad, little also agitated by it. Bit like hopeless too.
Yeah.
Like why is this? Why do I react this way?
Yeah.
Disappointed.
Yeah. So all of those, because you have a need for, what's the need that's not satisfied?
safety, love, and respect. Trust.
Yeah, but those are towards her. You know, I'm thinking about the needs towards yourself for, because you're sad because of your reactivity, right? You're sad because you get so angry.
Yeah. So I mean, so then like the need that I need is just kind of like empathy towards myself and like compassion.
Compassion, yeah.
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 I felt compassion.
Harmony, balance,
Balance,
yeah.
inner peace.
Yeah, inner peace. Yeah, yeah. So then what's a request that you could make to help you meet those needs?
So the request to myself, it could be like, okay, like find the things that bring you inner peace, whether that's taking some breaths before some of you, if I notice something is starting to agitate me, like take several deep breaths before continuing. Meditation helps, having meditation practice, or noticing when something is happening and giving myself, again, maybe it's like however amount of time I need to like take a break from the conversation and then come back to not be charged, basically.
Yes. So those are great, right? Those are great requests. The idea would be to make them a SMART request, right? Figure out some specific, actionable, measurable, relevant, all of that. And then also to notice that there may be those things that you've known to do, but you still haven't done.
Yeah.
Right. It may not, we know that ideally we would take a breath before reacting, and yet we still react.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then the request often is not going to be a solution yet. It's the beginning of the exploration. In this particular case, this self-request is the beginning of the exploration. It's to just go, wow. Yeah, I mean, now you're aware of it, right? So because you're aware of it, this is not something totally new for you. For some people, it's a revelation. The first time they start looking at that and going, oh my God, when somebody's late and I'm angry, that anger is mine. Yeah. Because nobody makes me angry, right? In NVC, the motto is that nobody makes me angry.
Yeah.
Anger, it just is in me. And it gets triggered by people that do certain things that activate these wounds that I have inside me. That's the model. And for some people, that's very foreign. It's very hard to accept because we think we're justified. We think every time somebody does something that's not okay, I'm justified in my feelings, whether my feelings are fear or shame or anger or sadness or hurt. Those are justified feelings. And in my model, in this NVC model, anything that's a response, great. Anything that's a reaction, mine. That's my issue. It's not justified.
Okay.
Because otherwise, I'm at the mercy of the world forever. Otherwise, every time somebody's late and I get angry because they're disrespecting me, I am at their mercy. Every time somebody's late, I'm going to be angry. Every time somebody cuts me off in traffic, I'm going to be angry. Every time somebody's slow at the bank or at the grocery store, I'm going to be angry. And so I'll never be free. So if my feelings are justified, I will never be free. I will always be at the mercy of all these people that are triggering these feelings in me. And so the goal for me is to free myself of that as much as possible. It's not easy, it takes years, but it's to slowly begin to free myself of that and to notice that when somebody does something and I'm reactive, there's something that I can do about that. Because I can go around and try to stop people from being late and be aggressive to people who cut me off and do all of that. It won't stop it. There'll always be others. But if I can change the reaction in me, now I'm free. Now, it doesn't mean that I accept everything that's happening in the world. It doesn't mean I'm a doormat and that people just do what they do and I just have to accept it and just deal with my feelings. No, there's still the external track. If somebody's late or somebody wants, is reactive to me needing space, I still want to address the issue with them. but I don't have to be at the mercy of my own reactivity. So I do my internal track to figure out where this reactivity comes from and what I can do about it. And then I do the external track to address the issue with them of what they're doing. And eventually, if I get to a place where I'm just responding, I don't have to do an internal track because there's nothing activated in me, but I just address the problem with them. Certainly they're late, half an hour late. I had to wait. You know, I'm not angry about it, but I'm also not pleased. And so then I want to make sure that we figure out a way to deal with it so that I don't have to wait half an hour every time we meet.
So when you say like figuring out where does it come from and that internal exploration, is that just kind of also like a, whether that's like the lack of inner peace or some unrest because of something that is going on or whatever trauma from the past, like like then we're going down into like those levels of like, okay, I have road rage, you know, for whatever reason, you know, what's going on here, and then being able to just be like, okay, I don't need to give a fuck if someone cut me off because it doesn't matter. Like, what's the reaction? Why is it worth it to build up all the cortisol in my body and then be angry?
Yeah, that's the idea, right? So that's why often when I go through the process, my request is going to be, okay, so I have road rage, right? I notice that when somebody cuts me off in traffic, I get really angry. I'm confused by it. I'm also a bit ashamed by it. You know, I have a need for inner peace and compassion. So my request is maybe I need therapy. You know, maybe I need to begin exploring where this comes from. So often the request, especially when we're working in groups and we're helping each other with requests, you know, it's not about giving them the solution. It's about guiding them to figure out what that first step is. You know, it could be, my first step will be journaling. My first step will be talking to someone about it. My first step will be to researching it. You know, I could Google road rage and learn more about it and see where it comes from. You know, I can Google trauma. I can Google anything. So that first step will be something that resonates with me that I can start doing tomorrow. What can I start doing tomorrow to begin addressing this issue? Now, addressing it may take years, right? If there's trauma, it may take a long time to heal that trauma, but that's fine. I just want to get on that journey. I want to stop blaming the world for these things that are happening in me and start beginning to own my shit, you know, take responsibility for my emotions, and then begin the healing process of figuring out where they come from. So when I have a reaction, usually the first step is vulnerability. You know, it's to notice it. How quickly can I notice that I got a reaction? How quickly can I notice that I get angry? How quickly can I notice that I flip somebody off and that I actually don't want to do that? You know, maybe it takes me 2 minutes to realize and go, oops. Maybe it takes me a day. And then the next day I wake up and I go, oh, fuck, when I did that yesterday, that really wasn't so cool. Damn, I got caught again. Fine. You know, so acceptance, noticing it, awareness. So the first step is awareness, you know, the awareness that I got caught, I got reactive. And then being able to be vulnerable about it. You know, it's like, okay, admitting it and saying, okay, I got caught. Oops. You know, it's okay. We all do. We all get caught. We all have reactivity. And then being able to regulate, you know, maybe if I'm noticing it in the moment, I might be able to do something about it and regulate myself, like you said, taking some breath. You know, if I realize I'm getting triggered, maybe I can regulate if I have that capacity. And then once I've regulated, maybe go towards understanding. Where does this come from? Why is it that everybody, my partner gets triggered about me wanting space? I get activated. What is that about? So maybe I have a wound around that. Maybe my mother never gave me space. Maybe my parents, in my family, there was no way to have space. So really when I'm reactive, that's what I'm mad about. You know, it's not about my partner, it's about my parents. It's this old wound. So the more understanding I get around that, the easier it is to then accept in the present. So for example, for me, one of the ways that I dealt with this road rage stuff is I did an initiation in a men's group. And we had to do, they gave us a challenge. I had to do this challenge for 2 months, and it was a bunch of different pieces. And one of them was to find love in the world. Every day I was supposed to find love in the world and then journal about it, because I had an issue with, you know, not believing in unconditional love. It was one of the themes that came up in this initiation. But so what I did, for some reason, as I was trying to do that, I realized what if I look at everything that annoys me and I give it love? And so every time somebody was slow, like for me, slow people in front of me, oof, that's a trigger. You know, I'm a fast mover. You know, I talk fast. You can see it here. I'm constantly trying to slow myself down, but my natural way is very fast. So people in front of me, slow, trigger. So whenever people cut me off, anything that annoyed me, I gave it love. As soon as I noticed that I was in that annoyance, I would say, okay, I give you love. And then if I noticed that I got a bit assholey about it or something, I would give myself love, you know, for whatever I did. And I did that for 2 months every day, you know, and then I would journal about it. And it totally reframed it all for me. It took away all that stress. And to this day, I still do it, you know, whenever something comes up and I can see myself getting triggered, I give it love. And it's so much easier. So when I'm driving, you know, somebody honks or cuts me off, my first reaction is, you mother, you know, and I want to curse them out. And in the middle of the curse, I catch it, I give it love, I give myself love, and I'm done. And I don't think about it anymore. And it's over. You know, in the past, I would have been chasing them down, you know, try to run them off the road or something, you know, or curse them out or whatever. You know, now it takes a few seconds, maybe a minute, and then it's gone. So that's what's possible. You know, it's what I call catch and release. Catch your trigger, release it. And it's easy to do with things like that for me because it's not that big a wound. You know, if it's something to do with my partner and abandonment, you know, that's a much bigger wound for me. So it might be a little more difficult to catch and release it. Might take me a little bit longer, but still fairly quickly, I can notice that I'm feeling this abandonment stuff and I know what it is. I know the story. I don't need to do, I've done all the healing work or a lot of healing work about it. So I know what the story is. So all I need to do is notice it, breathe, and then reframe in my mind and then let it go. But that may take years of work and that's fine, you know, so catching the reactivity, understanding what it's about, and then releasing it. For deep trauma, this could take a long time, you know, and it's fine. But as long, so especially for me, when I'm dealing with people or my partner, as long as I know that at some point they're going to own it. At some point they're going to come back and go, oh, that was me. You know, at first they're blaming me for their feelings, but if at some point, an hour later, the next day, they can come back and go, okay, this is my shit, I'm sorry, great. That's what I want, you know, and that's what I want to be able to do. And that's what I want, I expect, you know, I wish for people in my life, because otherwise there is nothing you can do. If somebody's blaming me for their feelings, you know, I've had a girlfriend who had a lot of insecurity, and anytime her insecurity got triggered, it was my fault, no matter what I did. Sometimes I may have done something that was, you know, not so safe or whatever, but often I didn't. It just, you know, I looked the wrong way and then her insecurity got triggered and then it was my fault. And she could never own it. It kept being my fault. So there's nothing I could do with it. All I could do was defend, or just hold space for her. But she would just be in that spin of just continuing to blame. And when we do that, there's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And we never actually address it. You know, as long as she could blame me, she didn't have to address it in herself. Unfortunately, for some people, especially wounds that are around self-worth, really difficult. Because if I have self-worth issues, if I think I'm not good enough, and then something happens and it's pointed out that it's because of you know, my wound of not being good enough, then I don't feel good enough about that, and then I loop. And so it can be very difficult with people that have that wound to not having them loop into it. And it's kind of a never ending thing. Yeah. But, you know, again, once they're ready to do the healing, that's the place. It's being able to own it and go, okay, this is what my wound is. We all have all these wounds. It's totally fine. How do I begin to address it? And so NVC is a great tool to notice it, right? Whenever I'm reactive, and then whenever I go to someone and I try to use NVC to have them not do the thing that triggers me. It's a great idea, but again, if I don't do the internal track, it's never really going to work well. I'm going to try to use NVC to manipulate people into being safer around me. But if it's my issue with safety, yeah, I'm not addressing it. So that brings us to the needs part, right? So when we look at the needs, NVC says needs are universal. We all have these needs, but we have them to very different degrees, and partly because of our culture and our conditioning, and also because of our wounding. So if I got a wound around safety, my need for safety is going to be way higher than other people's needs for safety. And so then I'm going to try to use NVC to get that need for safety met. It's not going to go well, because nobody can meet that need but me. What we can do for each other is we can support each other in meeting our baseline needs. My need for freedom, my need for safety, my need for love. Let's say there's a 0 to 100 and the baseline is at 20. That's the baseline need. We all can support each other there. But once my need for safety goes to 100, other people can't really meet that because it's not realistic. And so one of the ways to support each other in NVC is to meet people where they're at. Since we all have needs at a different level, to accept and understand that other people have a different need than we do. My girlfriend's need for safety, much higher than mine. So when we're on a scooter, my need for freedom is to drive as fast as I want. And then her need for safety is for me to not drive so fast. So, how do we solve it? Well, I had to learn to validate her need. Her need is valid. Her need for safety is valid. If it's too big and she says you can only drive 5 miles an hour, well then no, I can't meet that. That's not going to work. Then I can't drive with her. But if she's asking me for a reasonable amount of safety, yes, then I can meet that. And so learning how to meet people where they are is really critical in connection. Too often we discount other people's needs because we don't understand them. For a long time, I thought I was playing by the golden rule, which is treat others like you want to be treated. It's the Jesus rule, and it's a great rule for kids. That's how you start in life. Treat others like you want to be treated. Works great at the beginning of life as you're learning how to navigate. But then I learned that no, I have to treat others like they want to be treated. They don't care what I want. Most people don't want what I want. I'm quirky, I want things that nobody else wants. And so it doesn't work, right? So learning how to give people what they want. And so then how to meet their needs. Now, if their needs are too out of whack, if it's what I call an unhealthy expression of the need, or a hungry ghost, in Buddhism, yes, then that's impossible to meet. So figuring out the balance between all of that, because most conflicts are going to be a needs issue. Whenever you find yourself arguing with someone, if you stop for a second and go, wait a minute, whatever we're talking about here, what's the need? What do I need? What do they need? And once you figure that out, it doesn't matter what you're arguing about anymore. It's never about the laundry. It's about respect, it's about connection, it's about cooperation, but it's not about the laundry. And if you keep arguing about the laundry, you're not going to get anywhere. But if you figure out that it's about respect, okay, well then how can I respect you? What are the ways that I can meet your need for respect? That's a very different conversation. And if you look at relationships, my model of relationships is what I call wound attraction. When we fall in love with someone, our soul attracts what it wants to heal. And so usually it's falling in love for me is wound attraction. There's something in me that needs healing, and I will attract people that will bring about that healing, or that my soul, my unconscious believes these people can bring about that healing. One way that I support that is that, falling in love, you walk into a room and you see somebody and you go, oh my God, he's it, she's it. There's something about that person. You just go, wow. Why? I mean, of course, yeah, they're attractive, but there's a lot of attractive people around. And I don't say that about all of them, but there's some people I just go, wow. How do I know? I know nothing about them. And yet energetically, there's this thing that pulls me to them. And that thing is what I call wound attraction. the idea is that, you know, we're wounded, we have childhood wounds with our parents, father, mother. And so we're going to look for a partner who will trigger those wounds so that we can work on them and then heal them. So if I've been abandoned by my mother, which I have personally, I had abandonment issues with my mother, I'm attracted to unavailable women. And I'll see something, I'll see a woman, and just if she's got that look that I see as something unavailable, boom, I'm attracted. And it took me a long time to figure that out, but eventually I realized it, and I see it happening all the time now. And I go, oh, wow, yes, she's got this unavailable thing, and right away I'm attracted. And the idea is that then if I can, you know, end up in a relationship with her and then have her, and then this issue is going to come up, so it's going to trigger my abandonment. And if we can heal that together, then I can heal that parental wound. And it's a beautiful model, except that we don't know, most of us go into this relationship not knowing that this is what's happening. And so then the abandonment gets triggered, and then I start blaming, and then it triggers her wound around blame. And so then she gets even more upset and wants to abandon me even more. And now we're just hurting each other. And it's this cycle. And if you've had relationships and you look back, I'm sure you've experienced that cycle. You know, I experienced it many times, and it's a real pain, and it just happens over and over until I finally realized what was going on. And so now I can enter into a relationship eyes wide open and say, hey, you're going to trigger my abandonment. What am I going to trigger in you? And now we can explore it, and now we can do it consciously, so that when the abandonment comes, we can use NVC, we can own our triggers. You know, it really takes going, oh, wow, when you do this, man, my abandonment comes up. I feel really scared, and I feel really worried. And I notice it's my abandonment. And then they can go, oh, okay. And they can hold space for that. They don't have to fix it, but at least they can see what's happening. And so then that holding space and that creating more safety together is what then allows us to heal that together. But it requires understanding the wound. And so using, again, NVC to figure out the triggers so that I can start understanding the wound is what will help me then use that in relationship, in conscious relationship, to work on this consciously. All right. You know, that's a lot of information. You're getting my brain dump. Any questions, any thoughts?
Oh, that's great. It's always a lot of stuff to try to do.
Yeah. Yeah, not easy to do it all, right? But just having awareness of it, right? That's the key. Having awareness, having the willingness to be vulnerable with our wounds is huge. And again, these are my models. They're not the truth. You don't have to agree with them all. You know, I'm happy to hear dissenting opinions or other, you know, there's other communication models, other relationship models. These are the ones that I work with. But it doesn't mean that they're the, Lucia, go ahead.
I have a question. What about when you don't know the person? Because I feel like NVC is not the best type of communication with everyone. Like, for example, the other day I realized that the fruit lady was charging me at least 30% more every time. Like I got a scale and started weighing the fruit when I got home, and I realized that she's ripping me off since always.
Yeah.
So it's not like I can go and tell her, listen, the other day you charged me $1.7 kg and it was $1.3 kg, so I feel like blah, blah, blah to the fruit lady, right?
Well, you could. No, the truth is you could, right? You don't know. So great question. So it's a whole topic that I didn't talk about. You can use NVC at the beginning. When you learn NVC, you've got this model with the 4 steps and all of that. Eventually, the goal is connection, you know, and it's not to use the steps so much, is to figure out how to talk in a way that's connective. And so using feelings and needs as opposed to thoughts. If you went there and said, hey, I'm confused, you know, because I was thinking that I was supposed to pay this much and then you charge me this much, so I'm confused. If you said that, as opposed to, hey, you're ripping me off. I'm not saying it's wrong to say you're ripping me off, but it's probably going to be a lot less effective than going in there sharing some feeling. You know, if you say I'm really sad because you're charging me too much, yeah, sad in this case. In a transactional connection, feelings and needs are usually not as appropriate or may not be as useful, but it can be. You know, if you're in a competitive situation or like at work, you know, where the goal is productivity, the goal is not connection. You know, if the goal at work is for people to work as much and as fast as they can, and you go and say, hey, I'm feeling really tired or sad or disappointed that because my need for ease and flow is not being met, they're gonna laugh at you because it's not about ease and flow. They have a different need. But there may be ways to bring issues up at work using feelings and needs. And then also another big issue is if I can address their need first. If I can see that there's a resistance to meeting my need, I have to figure out what their need is. So the more I can pay attention to their need and try to connect to their need and meet their need first, then they might be able to meet my need. Now with her, I don't think that's gonna work, right? With her, it's more about, you know, sharing, like I said, confusion maybe, you know, and then asking for an explanation or asking for clarification, you know. But again, trying it from a place of connection as opposed to a place of trying to get her. Thanks, Asgard. Bye. As opposed to telling them what they're doing wrong. The other thing you can do with NVC is you can reverse it, right? You can do, you can ask someone, you can tell someone, hey, I noticed this happened. What are you feeling? Or are you feeling sad? Are you feeling hurt? Are you feeling worried? Do you have a need for connection? What could I do to support that need? Right. So especially when if it's somebody who doesn't do NVC or that's lost in their own feelings, I can try to translate what's happening with them. It's what Marshall Rosenberg calls putting your giraffe ears on. You know, giraffe, he uses giraffe and jackals as puppets to explain NVC, and the giraffe is a big heart. And so speaking giraffe language means speaking NVC language, but also putting on my giraffe ears means translating jackal speech into giraffe speech. So if somebody's blaming me or attacking me or whatever, I can translate what they're saying into NVC and guess, okay, so they're telling me that I did this wrong and did that wrong and I'm an idiot and all of that. Obviously, they're feeling angry. That's pretty obvious, but maybe they're feeling unsafe. Maybe they're feeling confused. So maybe what they need is support. Okay, so let me address that. And so after they told me all these things I did wrong, then I say, hey, so I'm wondering if you need support, how can I support you? You know? And the idea is to always guess. You want to guess at their feeling. You want to say, I'm wondering, or imagine maybe you're feeling this. You know, you don't want to tell them what if you say, I think you're feeling that, you're telling them what they're feeling. That might bring more resistance. But if you ask, are you feeling this? Or I'm wondering if you're feeling this, then you're inviting them to reflect and say yes or no.
When I got NVC training years ago, one of the things this was particularly for relationships, I think, was about entering into a NVC approach like consensually. Like if you know NVC and your person doesn't, like not using NVC, which a lot of people will then NVC their way out of things or use it and the person doesn't know what's going on and are like, sort of say like, hey, can we go through this process together?
Yes.
Because otherwise sometimes people can be like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yes, especially if you're not that great at it yet. So at the beginning, you know, when you learn NVC, like if this is your first time exploring NVC, you know, it's like you just got your driving permit, right? You're not really licensed to drive yet. So don't go out there racing on the freeway. You know, don't take this and try to NVC your mother. You know, that probably might not go so well. You know, practice for a while in easy situations before you go for the harder ones. And yes, it's great to actually say to someone, hey, there's this process I'm learning. I would love to try it on this situation. Are you open for us to try this? And then you see if it works. As you get better at it, you're not really NVCing people anymore.
Yeah.
You know, you're just talking from a place of connection and feelings and needs. You know, when my partner has something going on, I'll just, you know, or I'll just say, wow, okay, well, wow, when this happens, huh? So I think right now I'm feeling a bit hurt right now. I'm feeling disconnected, you know, and maybe I don't even use those words. I may not use the word feeling in need. I say it in another way, right? Wow, I'm really disconnected right now, huh? You know what? Can we just sit for a bit? You know, that's NVC. You know, my need is to have some presence, and I'm feeling vulnerable. I don't have to use the language. I can just do it. And it doesn't have to be in that order. You can start with a request as long as it comes with the need in there somewhere. Or you can, you know, make an observation that's a mix of feelings and needs, and back to the observation. Again, it doesn't, you know, once you know how to do it, the goal is to trigger empathy. You know, it's not to manipulate. And that's what I was saying, when we're not really conscious of the source of our feelings, and we're trying to get people to meet the need that's really a wound, that's when it's not going to go well. That's when we're being manipulative. So if someone wants to try one, we got time for another one. Anybody want to do a little live practice? Or more questions?
Actually, I'd like to know how to address my food lady.
Your food lady. Yeah.
Yeah, because
you
because
try.
actually what happened is that I don't trust her, so I get home and I weigh everything again.
Yeah.
So how do I express to her, I don't trust you, so I'm checking what you weigh, and I realize you're lying to me.
Yeah. So what do you think? What would be a way to say? I mean, you heard me share something earlier. I don't know if that resonated or not.
Yeah, the thing is that at the moment, I have no idea how much it should be, because I don't have my scale there unless I bring it with me. So saying I'm confused because I thought I should pay this much, I think that would apply if I knew at the time how much I should pay, no?
Yeah, but so what you could say is, so do you know what the cost is? You know, and because you figured it out, right? You figured out she charged you so much, and then when you got home, you waited and it wasn't accurate. So what would you go back and say? Said, oh, hi, hey, I noticed yesterday. What's the observation? The observation is, I noticed yesterday when I got home and I weighed my pineapple, it was only blah, 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 only 1 kilo. And I think what you charged me was for 1.5 kilos.
Okay.
So of course she might say whatever she's going to say, but the goal is, again, not to be accusatory so much, is just to state a fact. Now she may disagree with your fact, but at least now she knows you're weighing it on the way home. So next time, then she might be more accurate. But so when she's weighing the fruit there, can you look at the scale and see how much she's weighing?
She destroyed the window so much that it's impossible to see.
So then, and what about on her side?
Cracked.
So what about on her side?
Yeah, but she stands in a way that you need to kind of push her. Like she does it to everyone, so she knows how to do it.
Yeah.
It's not a mistake, you know. It's pretty.
Yeah, I'm sure, you know, they've got their systems, of course. Yeah, so I mean, basically, yeah. So I think the key is to let her know that you're onto her. You know, it's like, hey, I noticed when I got home and I weighed my fruit, you know, it was 1 kilo. It wasn't 1.5 kilos or whatever it was. But the other thing to explore, is this a response or is this a reaction? How much money are you losing each time?
Yesterday it was 70 baht.
All right, so 70 baht.
Only yesterday.
Yeah, so it's more or less significant, and in the big scheme of things. So I'm curious, Russell, one of the things that, if this is really annoying you that much, yeah, maybe you have a thing around fairness, right? There's an issue with fairness. There's an issue with trust and respect or something like that. because
Yeah,
some,
right.
you know, some people are going through the exact same thing you're going through, and they're going, oh well, you know, there's, you know, she's not getting rich off of this, right? She's kind of surviving selling her fruit here, and so she's charged me a couple of dollars extra. I can let it go, right? There may be some people that have that reaction, and some people that get really angry about it, and some people that are in the middle somewhere. And none of them is a right and wrong reaction. I'm not judging any of it. I'm just noticing that we all have a different thing. And so exploring my own, that's the whole goal of doing my internal track, as well as the external track. But, you know, if I do my internal track first, I'm going to be much more available for dealing with the external track in a better manner. And also, I'm also letting people know, if I do my internal track first and own it, and say, wow, you know, when you're late, I totally feel disrespected. I know it's not a feeling, but I know that that's my experience of being disrespected. So I know that that's what I'm working on. And so I'm not putting that on you. And I do want to deal with the lateness issue, right? So you're letting them know that your angry reaction or whatever is yours. You're not blaming them, but then you still want to deal with it. So, you know, it could be something like that. You could say that to her, you know. I don't know if her English, you know, warrants it, but you could say, you know, when I notice that the weight is 1 kilo instead of 1.5 kilos, and I get home, you know, I lose my respect.
You mean I lose my respect for you?
Yeah, yeah. Or I lose trust. I don't trust you. You know, I notice I'm having a difficult time trusting. You know. So, and what's your request? You know, in the end, I mean, how are you going to know if she's cheating or not? Maybe you say, hey, I want to see. You can just say, hey, can I see? When she weighs it, you say, I want to see.
She possibly her scale is tampered or something.
Well, that's also possible. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, there are other fruit ladies out there, right? So that's also,
I know.
you have prerogatives,
Yeah,
right?
I had stopped buying from her for a long time, but yesterday it just triggered. I just bought something and triggered again.
Yeah, but so like you just said, it got triggered, right? So there's something, you're kind of pissed off, right?
Yeah, I am. Of course I am.
Yeah, well, because
Yeah.
that's an
I know I am.
that's an internal track, right? That would be beautiful to explore, because otherwise, every time a fruit lady overcharges you, you're activated, and now your day's ruined. Maybe not your whole day, maybe just an hour in your day, but you know, and so that's the goal, right? How do I free myself of this reactivity? How do I figure out where it comes from, so that when this stuff happens, I go, oh, she charged me. Okay, I'll deal with it tomorrow, but no big deal. That's the goal, right? Can you notice it? I'm not saying don't address it, but don't get triggered by it, right? That's what we're trying to accomplish here. You know?
Yeah.
Slowly but surely. It's a slow work in progress, right? To notice these triggers, you know. Yeah. And like I said, I still have plenty of them. I'm not cured. I wish I was. I'm not cured. But it's always a work in progress. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? Derek and Daisy, any last questions before we go?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, no questions. Everything has been really great, and kind of like people have been talking to me a lot about it and telling me I should like listen in, and so I was like, I want to try today. And my friend Nedge was here, and like she had to go, but she wants the video after you said you recorded, right?
Yes, I can share that if you want. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, please do.
Okay.
But everything else, it's just been really nice, like being able to listen and kind of see everything.
Great, thank you. Yeah, another thing is there's no shoulds in NVC. Thanks for reminding me, Derek, right? So there's woulds, coulds, maybe, but we try to avoid shoulds, because there's no should. There's no right, you know, there's no right and wrong. There's no the way the world is supposed to be, you know. my philosophy is be with what is. Whatever is happening in the world is what's happening. If it should be different, then good luck, you know, trying to change the way the world is. Doesn't mean I don't, you know, address issues. But, you know, it'd be like saying the fruit lady should never overcharge. Well, yeah, maybe not. I don't know. I don't have a, it may be her job to, you know, to overcharge. That's what she's trying to do. She's trying to survive. And then my job is to catch her and then let her know that I'm not okay with it. But there's no should. There may be some shoulds out there once in a while, you know, thou shalt not kill, but even then, but it's good to kind of have that as a, again, as a connection idea. You know, we're here to connect, not to tell each other what's right. So beyond this, if you want to keep playing with us, Mondays from 2 to 4, we have the in-person group at the Wisdom Eye right now. We meet in person from 2 to 4 on Mondays at the Wisdom Eye. And then tonight at 7 p.m., we do it online. We have a 2-hour online group. It's the same process, online or in person. We basically meet, we check in with each other, we talk about NVC for a while, people share how they're using it in real life example like the ones you talked about today and how it's working or not working. See you, Julian. And then we get in small group and practice. And you get to share an example and then run through it, and people will help you figure out. If you have a hard time, they can help you figure out what your observation, what your feelings, what your needs are, and then making a request. So you get to practice doing it yourself, and then you get to help others go through their process. And it's great because you learn so much from watching the others go through their process, as well as trying it for yourself. So that's the scoop. And then this intro happens every week. You can do it again if you want to, you know, hear it again and or go deeper with it or ask more questions, or send your friends. And that's it. Any last questions or comments? Cool. Well, then have fun. Keep playing with it. Feel free to send me any questions. If there's something I forgot or you think of something, it can be pretty triggering to think in this way and to try to use it. And then it's not working. I have people telling me later, oh, fuck NVC, it's not working. I don't like it. You know, it's fine. That happens. Certainly the way we use it out there, the way other people use it out there can be a bit triggering. Yeah. All right. Well, hope to see you around.
Yeah, see you Monday. Thank you. Thank you
You're
very
welcome.
much.
Yeah.
Goodbye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, Derek.